Welcome back, folks. 24 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, and we want to get some clarity on what has occurred at the Cipriani College. And yesterday we were talking with Dr. Ian Lemsey, and he was actually indicating that his termination was untimely and that he felt that there were a number of irregularities in terms of how the college's finances were being managed, and so on and so on and so on. Well, we were able to get the chairman of the board of directors of the college, Comrade Joseph Remy. You know him also as the president of CWU. And we also have with him Mr. Trevor Johnson, and he is in fact one of the directors on the board. Gentlemen, welcome to Morning Edition.
Morning, it's a pleasure.
Good to have you here. I really wish that we were meeting under different circumstances, as I told Dr. Lemsey yesterday. But Comrade Remy, could you explain, the circumstances surrounding the termination of Dr. Lemsey?
Okay, let me just put it into context at the beginning and to correct one thing that was said yesterday, in that the director's services were terminated by the chairman. And whatever happened at the college is on the basis of a board decision. And this chairman don't operate unless there is a consensus by the entire board. So I just wanted to put that to rest so that we would not personalize the issues to make it appear in the public domain that there is some kind of issue between myself, a personal issue between myself and the director. So the decision that was taken with respect to the director's tenure was on the basis of a board decision. And again, I also want to...
Now, he also mentioned at that point in time that he felt that he only benefited from one performance review before his contract was terminated. And he's been at the college for the past 2 years. So what he suggested was that in 2 years, he was only privy to one particular performance review, and he felt that on that basis, it was unfair for the board to take such a decision.
Well, you see, and what is now being played out in the public domain is to me, unethical and unprincipled and unprofessional. There's an issue. If there is an issue with respect to the process that was utilized, and I heard Dr. Lemsey, and I can't say director anymore, former director, said that he is going to vigorously pursue legal action. But at the same time, there are things that have been said that us is a breach of the same principles that we are talking about. Let me just put this thing in a particular context. The board brought in Dr. Lemsey, and again the board, in 2011, because the college would have went on without a director since we came on board in December 2010.
Right.
And that had happened before, when the previous director, Dr. Williams, demitted office on the basis of... And we have to understand, Cipriani at that time, 2009 into 2010, went through a tumultuous period when there was an attempt by the previous government to integrate it into the operations of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And based on the strong, conscious and progressive defense by the trade union movement in particular, that effort was staved off, and the college remained an independent institution for the cooperative and the labor movement under the auspices of the Ministry of Labor. And they went on without a director 2009 into 2010. And in 2011, in June 2011, the director was brought on board from the 1st of June 2011. And a process stepped in. The board instituted key deliverables, discussed it with the director, and then the board entered into a process of evaluating the director's performance collaboratively with the director. The board met before. We developed the criteria. We developed what we considered to be what was delivered on the basis of what was articulated in the first instance. And thereafter, an evaluation was done. The director was part of the process. What transpired subsequent to that is, to us, one of the most unprofessional acts by anybody at that level. Because up to now, that performance appraisal has not been signed. Even though the director reported at the subsequent board meeting in July 2012, after the performance evaluation was done, that he wanted to commend the board for its frank assessment and made a commitment to institute all the changes that the board had articulated on the basis of what we discovered to be performance gaps and performance deficiencies. So the process was collaborative, but there would have been a lot of issues leadership challenges that the board discovered, even in the process of accreditation, institutional accreditation. And that this whole issue came to the fore sometime late in 2000. And thereafter, the issues continued thereon, and we attempted to deal with it in a progressive manner. There were meetings with the director. Repeatedly at board meetings, questions were raised, issues were identified, and we asked that the director do certain things to improve on his performance. It reached our head. There was intervention by the Minister of Labour, contrary to what was reported yesterday.
And when did that intervention take place? By
the minister came on board in 2013, when the thing really reared its head in a very ugly manner, and we had meetings at the ministry. It ended up where the minister spent almost 3/4 of a day at the college speaking to the board and the director to have these issues resolved. We had subsequent meetings back at the ministry. Myself and Mr. Johnson, myself and the deputy chairman, we met with the minister, the permanent secretary. So this is not something that is just a knee-jerk reaction. There would have been a process that would have been instituted over a period of time, because there were serious issues at the college with respect to leadership, not the institutional framework in the institution, and I think we need to make that differentiation. Because the college was successful in its accreditation trust, and the success of that accreditation was not on the basis of what Dr. Lemesi is saying. And I want to publicly say that, because you see, the teamwork that was displayed and the sacrifices that were made by the other members of the team has been pushed aside for one man aggrandizement, and that is the problem we are having in this country at this time. And I think the President's remarks at the opening of Parliament is so poignant at this time. Doctorates don't make you an honorable man.
Indeed, they don't. Mr. Johnson, you are the chairman of the board's HR committee.
Yeah.
So, in many respects, you would have been keeping a close eye on a number of the HR issues, a number of the personal issues at the college itself. Clarify this to me in terms of the performance assessment of the former director. That performance assessment took place in July of 2012.
Yes, that performance assessment, yes, that is when it was a process over time, I must say, so that it wasn't just like, but that July 2012 would have been the time when it was basically
and subsequent to that was another assessment done, or was it just basically the director attending board meetings to give updates and the directors of the board being given a sense as to whether or not these deliverables were being achieved?
Well, the director, as you indicated, deliverables were identified, bearing in mind, as the chairman had indicated earlier, that the first performance appraisal was, in a sense, whilst he acknowledged it at board meetings, it was never really signed off on totally, but the board did set deliverables as we continued to operate in line with our strategic objectives, because...
let me be clear, though. This performance assessment that was done in July 2012 was sort of in dispute, because if the director didn't sign off on it, that means that there must have been some aspects of that performance appraisal that he was in disagreement with.
Let me clear that up. And you see, this is where the whole scenario developed to us in a very unprofessional manner. There was no objections raised by the director, absolutely none.
So why did he sign the performance appraisal?
That is what all of us are still querying at this time. The director never came to the board. There is no record in any board minutes where the director raised any query. One, with the deliverables that were set in the first instance. Two, with the method that we used to do his evaluation. And three, with the outcome of the evaluation. There were subsequent board meetings thereafter. Board was ironic. We did a second set of deliverables for the director, and he participated in the process. And part of the process was for him to do a presentation to the board. So he did that presentation to the board again on the basis of the deliverables that the board set. And then the board said that we will do a second performance appraisal. That has not happened because of all the leadership issues that has evolved since 2011. The thing has exacerbated to the point where the director thereafter, after the chairman made 3 requests to the director to send him the signed copy of his performance appraisal report, he thereafter then wrote and said that he was not satisfied with what was the process that was utilized. After you participated in the process on 2 occasions, we come from a movement in that we take positions with respect to performance evaluations. Not signing a performance report doesn't mean that the process didn't take place. It could indicate that I'm not in agreement.
Exactly.
But my issue is that the director never said that. He never signed the report and said, I'm not in agreement with what was evaluated. He never wrote a report to the board thereafter to say that what was done in 2012 on the basis of the evaluation was not in keeping with my performance. I need to appeal those issues.
Right,
That never happened.
But Chairman, you see, the thing is this. The very fact that he did not sign off on that first performance appraisal report meant that there must have been some discontent with the
but it was not, you see, at the subsequent board meeting, and that is where the contradiction lies. The director came to the board meeting in July 2012 and thanked the board for its frank assessment and committed to make the changes. It is minuted in the minutes of the college. It is minuted in the minutes of the college.
So explain to me then, Mr. Johnson, in terms of how this whole matter came to a head this year, 2013, on what basis then did the board take a decision to terminate the contract of the director?
Well, the chairman made reference earlier to a number of leadership challenges, and when we say leadership challenges, a number of issues that kept rearing their head. I mean, on a monthly basis, we were confronted every time we went to board meetings, and even in between board meetings at the level of the HR committee, there were a number of challenges, issues which, in terms of normal routine operations, we felt that as the head of the institution, the director of the college, would and should have been able to address these issues, and a number of these issues which really should have been more of an operational nature, one which should have been attended to by senior management, directed at the top, were being remitted to the board, so that we found ourselves getting involved in issues and having to give directions on what we considered to be issues that could have been handled or should have been handled at that level. And when I say we dealt with a number of issues, I mean, HR issues.
These are all very routine operational issues.
Well, yeah, which you know, you would expect that at the level of leadership would have been dealt with. And
but why would the director not be in a position or not be willing to treat with what you would consider to be operational issues?
Well, that I suppose is a question. But the fact remains, we continue to be plagued or to be confronted by these issues. We found that there were a number of interventions that had to be made to resolve certain issues, and at one point in time, the board actually was becoming concerned that you know, if we continue to be involved in all of these issues to the extent that we were, you know, that there could be a challenge, or the suggestion that we were in effect, you know, trespassing into the managerial operations of the college, because the board is there to set policy, to have general oversight, etc. So
but it took 12 months. I mean, from July 2012, when that first appraisal was done, it took approximately 12 months for the board to finally decide, well, look, this relationship ought to be terminated on the basis of non-performance.
Yes, because the whole issue of due process, I think this board has, if you have to understand as well the construct of the board, which is very important. This board, you have 4 representatives of the National Trade Union Center. You have the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Labor, Small and Micro Enterprise Development. You have the representative from the Commissioner's Office, that's the Commissioner of Cooperatives. You have a representative from the Ministry of Tertiary Education, and and a couple other representatives. So when you look at the construct, and in order to arrive at consensus, in order to allow time for resolution, so I think sometime the chairman had indicated in a press release that this was not a knee-jerk reaction. The board did not come to this conclusion, you know, in a month or two. So there was a series of, you know, there was dialogue, there was an attempt to build consensus, there was an attempt to reconcile the process. So the intention or the objective was not the termination of the contract of the director. The intention was the pursuit of the strategic objectives of the college, and to get all parties on board to go forward with that. leading, of course, towards the process of accreditation and building the college, so that it was not a board sitting trying to determine how do we get rid of someone. It was a board sitting to try to determine how do we work this process together to move the college forward. And when that process failed, as the chairman would have indicated, you had the intervention of the minister, you had the intervention of all the various representatives. And it's only after that failed then the issue of termination of the contract would have become...
Chairman Remy, I wonder if in all of this, when you look back from 2011 coming forward, can you identify where, in selecting the director to run the college and so on, can you identify where things may have gone wrong? Is it that he did not have the capacity, the capability? Is it that he did not have the necessary support in place to get the job done? Where within the operations of the college and his management style do you think things fell apart?
Okay, let me say what would have been an analysis that I would have drawn from the whole process. Is that the director came from a culture that is different to Trinidad and Tobago. He was brought in here from the United States of America after spending over 20 years there. And the director of, and you see we have to get the names clear, right? We are saying board of directors. We have what in the college is called the board of governors. We still have that whole colonial titles rested upon us. And we have a director of the institution, but in other tertiary educational institutions, you will call it the board of directors, and the director is like the president or the principal, right? And the operations of Cipriani required not a laid-back leadership style, that laissez-faire leadership style. It needed someone who could be charismatic, but at the same time has to be on the button with respect to doing things, because the operations of the college required a different type of leadership. And what we saw was happening is that the leadership competencies that were needed at the college in the accreditation process, where it was the belief of the board when the director was brought on that there was this experience in doing institutional accreditation. What came out during the whole accreditation process is that there were some shortcomings. But in addition to that, the operational issues at the college with respect to handling the day-to-day administrative and operational issues, we started to see the shortcomings in 2011. And we attempted, that is why the evaluation was done, and those things were pointed out to the director. We highlighted the gaps, performance gaps, that we felt would have been critical for him to make those necessary improvements. And what was, to us, very surprising is instead of addressing those gaps, there was this whole focus on other issues that were not relevant to what performance was. Let me just draw a few examples. There is the issue of gate. Under the director's tenure, I'm not saying who is responsible, but under the director's tenure, the college had to forfeit close to $500,000 in gate fees.
Why did that happen?
Because of the process that was not put in place to deal with the Tertiary Education Ministry's directive with respect to the gate funding for students with a GPA of 2.0 and below, right? So there was the policy direction from the ministry that all students under GPA of 2.0 would not be entitled to gate funding. On the basis of the institution's inability to address that policy directive from the ministry, students were allowed to register under the understanding and the clear implied and expressed requirement that they be funded, only to be told after they can't be funded, so that we could not have gotten gate fees for those students. So the college had to forfeit that. There were other issues that under the tenure of the director that we felt would not have allowed the college. There was an issue of the grading systems that were changed. Chaos in the institution. The board had to intervene and address those issues. And the most recent is the fact that we have ongoing collective agreement. And you see, those things are coming out gradually, where it is now discerned that cost items, college structure and the act allows the CPO. Now, we don't, from a trade union perspective, we have a challenge with that, because, the progressive trade union movement always see that the office of the CPO is not really consistent with the modern employment environment. But the law says that the CPO is the employer, and any cost item that has to be signed off must be done so with the succinct approval, not just of the CPO, but with the board.
Right.
The board gave a remit to resolve non-cost items. And what is coming to the college's attention is that cost items have been signed off without the CPO's guidance and approval, and without the board's guidance and approval. So, there were issues that keep coming up over a period of time, Aiden. And Trevor is right. Repeatedly at board meetings, the board directed the director, if there are blocks inside of the institution, if there are challenges to your leadership, identify them to the board. Let us put policies to deal with them, so that we could remove all the barriers to your performance thereafter. Nothing came to the board via recommendation or anything about these barriers that the director is alluding that would have been placed in his path to prevent him from delivering on the basis of what was set as the key deliverables. And to us, Hayden, we have to reach a place in Trinidad and Tobago where we must not allow the levels of non-performance to be recognized and rewarded. And we, from the trade union movement, and I'm not saying this just as a trade unionist, but I think as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, we are expending state resources. And somewhere we must reach to a point where we must demand that we get value for our money, and that there must be consequences once due process is allowed to take place and the principles of natural justice are used in the process. Then we must be strong to say that people must stand up and allow state resources to be properly dispensed on the basis of the quality that we get for it.
And that's an interesting point of view, because I wonder, Mr. Johnson, if you could clarify. Dr. Lemsey also raised the issue of his compensation, and he said that in one instance he had been promised a particular compensation package, and during the course of his tenure, that promise wasn't fulfilled to him. Is that an accurate representation of what happened?
No, that matter was resolved. I can indicate, yes, at the start of his tenure, there was an issue in terms of what was offered then and what the agreement the college and Dr. Lemsey had reached in terms of what he should be compensated. We had to seek approval for that. As the chairman has indicated, we operate with state funding, so that an agreement was reached. He started, the college was able to meet out of its own resources, meet the gap between what was advertised and what was paid to Dr. Lemsey. But further to that, we had to seek the resources of the state. And once that approval had reached, there were some administrative delays, but I can confirm that he did eventually get the package that was
promised to him.
That was agreed. So that with promise. With retroactivity.
Agreed. Yeah, that's right. Promise suggests that there was some kind of
informal arrangement.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Chairman,
and let me just add, with all the retroactivity attached to it, so there was no diminution in any way of the value of the package that was agreed between the parties.
Chairman, it is always unfortunate when these issues have to be interrogated in public.
That's right. That's unfortunate.
Because, as a tertiary institution, one of the critical pillars is the confidence of the public in how the institution is being managed and so on. What's the way forward to repair some of the damage that may have been done, perceived or real, to the image and the brand of the institution?
And that's where we want to focus. But let me just clear one thing after Aidan, and is that what we need to also clear up is the issue that we really attempted to follow due process. And in May, that is how long the process started there. In May this year, the director was written, outlining, I think, about 16 leadership issues that the board had identified. And we asked him that, could you please give us responses for those on the basis of what culminated over the years? And thereafter, we will determine how we move forward, whether the board will give considerations to the termination of a contract on that. We got a response from a senior counsel.
Which means that he passed passed on
That's
that
right.
communication from the board to his lawyers.
That's right. So senior counsel responded to the college's request. But what was interesting in that letter from the senior counsel was after all the responses to the issues the board raised, the senior counsel said he was instructed by his client that on the basis of the board's intention to look at the termination of his contract, he is requesting that we enter into discussions to arrive at a mutually accepted separation package. That wasn't the board's initiative. And you see, we need to clear these things up in the public domain. That was directly from the letter that we got from senior counsel representing the director, that the instruction his client gave was that we should enter into mutual discussions. We did that on the 15th of July. And by the 17th of July, we were awaiting response from the council and the director. By the 17th of July, the student guild president and the branch chairman were talking about these things in the public domain. The same things we were discussing in private on the initiative of the director and his legal rep. So you see, those are the issues that we need to clarify in the public domain so that people won't believe that this board and what has been said, led by a trade unionist and with 4 other trade unionists on board, have taken an action that is in defiance and in contravention of the principles of natural justice. We entered into good faith bargaining, good faith discussions with clear understandings that we were not going to disclose any part of that discussion, and those discussions were held at the behest of the senior counsel representing the director, and there was a breach of those fundamental principles of good faith bargaining. That is what we are considering to be unprofessional behavior, but we'll put that aside. The board has already moved ahead with the process of bringing in a new director. We have started the process. The HR department is now bringing together proposals through the tendering process for us to go outside here and seek a new director. We are looking at the leadership, executive leadership, and what the board wants to recognize is that the college is on very sound footing, not on the basis of the director's sole intervention. The accreditation has placed us. We have been given institutional accreditation for 5 years by the Accreditation Council. And what came out of the site visit by the Accreditation Council was the fact that this is a very unique tertiary educational institution that provides quality educations for those who can't afford and those who may not be given the opportunity in the mainstream tertiary institutions. And they recommended that the college should build on that and expand on that. They were also commendable about the institutional framework that the college had developed over the years. And let me just hasten to add that we were given high praises for producing one of the best self-study reports that was done for institutional accreditation. And let me say it was done because the board took a decision to bring on a consultant to lead the accreditation process, one who is now being accused of all kind of different spurious things. And that is what has built the college into a particular way. We have a very strong team in Cipriani. There are issues in Cipriani like all other institutions. There are management issues, there are operational issues, there are administrative issues, there are political issues internally. But leadership requires that you identify those things and you work around to build a team despite all the small cultural differences that you have internally in the institution. The focused leadership that is supposed to be provided to an institution will allow you to build a team that will move the college forward. And that is what was missing, and that is what we are aiming for right
Chairman,
now.
in looking for a new director for the college and repairing the damage that may have been done, real or perceived, to the college's image and so on, how do you plan to avoid this kind of public disquiet in the future?
Well, it's unfortunate that the disquiet has to reach, and we never, this board never had the intention of discussing Cipriani issues in public. That was one thing we have always said. We have always said at this board that we were boasting, We were boasting. We say, all kind of issues and boards all over the place in the public domain. Our institution was able to carry this thing forward, and that is why we attempted. And the issues of the leadership challenge didn't raise today. And if this board was operating consistent with the others that wanted to see this thing in the public, the action would have been taken a long time, but we felt no. Let us see if we could institute a process of rebuilding the whole thing, giving opportunities for corrections and for adjustments and for changes. And this thing started in the beginning of 2012, in 2013. And we have now reached to the point where we believe, after all the efforts that we have made over the year and a half, that the relationship, and it's not just the relationship, and you see what is being glossed in the public domain, is that there is this strong link with the two stakeholders internally, which is the student guild and the branch of the union. And let me just say, and I am happy when any leader can form relationships with the internal stakeholders. In addition to that, there must be deliverables. And you must deliver on the basis of expectations. And from where we sit, and it's not just us, and it is going to be revealed in due course. I am not sure that the wider student body is going to take the issue where they say, no, the college is inoperable. The college is operating. Registration is taking place at this time. So there is a miscommunication that is being peddled there, that the college is down, the college is operating. There are persons in the college who are not happy with the decision that the board take. There are persons in the college who may be happy with the decision the board take. But what the board has to do is the basis of the responsibility that was entrusted upon us to be guardian of the state resources in. And I would, as a leader, I would rather be ridiculed for taking a decision on the basis of what is supposed to be transparent, objective, and professional, as against taking a popular decision that may not be in the best interest of the institution.
But at the same time, Chairman, you have to avoid all of this from recurring in the
That's
future.
right, and we will avoid it because we are going to, the process of recruitment now has to be such that the person that is going to be brought on board, we have to learn from all experiences. And then this experience is a learning experience for us. And the process of recruitment is going to be a little more rigid, a little more detailed, and we are going to ensure that the competencies gap in terms of what is required and what is there is narrowed to the point that we are almost on board with everything.
Well, gentlemen, you have a lot of work ahead of you.
Certainly.
And the college is an important aspect of our
Critical for the working class institutions.
And certainly the people of Trinidad and Tobago will be looking on to see how you repair the situation and bring the college back to where it should be. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Yes,
Pleasure, Hayden.
Thank you for the clarity. Thank you for bringing things to the fore so that we can all understand how taxpayers' money are being spent. Yeah. Folks, we're going to go to the 7 o'clock news, and when we come back, we have Mr. Rondell Fields here to tell us a bit about what's happening with the Single Fathers Association. So stay with us.